chapter 10. We're going to do part 2 of chapter 10. Can everyone hear me okay? Give me a quick thumbs up. Just want to make sure. Y'all awake? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We're awake. Let's get into it. So part 2. So in part 1, we talked about the beginning stages of the interview process. What does that mean? That means someone has reached out to you. Clearly, you've replied to an advertisement. You've gotten a call back. Thank goodness. And maybe it's a HR person with a screening interview or whatever it is. Now you're about to go for the big thing, the big interview. And how do you prepare for that? What kind of questions are they going to ask you? And how should you answer these questions? So those are the things that we're going to talk about today. Now, clearly, when you arrive, now, us military folks say, if you on time, you are late. That means you need to be there at least 10 to 15 minutes prior to. Why do you want to do that? For obvious reasons. In addition to weather concerns and traffic, maybe you have to sign in. Maybe you have to go through security. Maybe they may say, oh, the meeting has been moved. And so now you're going to be down the hall or in the next building. Like, you don't know, right? So just arrive early so that you will always be prepared. Arriving early is always a good look. People love it when you're in the foyer or wherever it is, and you're waiting for them. I know I used to always love that. I love that when people showed up on time and I walk out and they're there and they're waiting for me. It starts out on a positive note. So always try to do that. Number 2, understand the company's, like I said, visitor protocol. That could be anything. Do you need a parking pass, a visitor pass, an ID? Like, you never know. So that's another reason why you want to show up early, especially if it's like in a building downtown or something crazy like that. Maybe you have to go through parking. You got to pay for parking, and then you got to make your way over to the buildings. Like, so just show up early. You just never know, right? Now, if you have a virtual interview really quickly, yeah, you don't have to commute anywhere, and there are some, advantages to that. Obviously, there are some clear disadvantages to virtual interviewing. One is the most effective way to engage with anyone is in person. Hopefully, we all agree with that. Why is that so important? Well, because there's all types of communication that happens between two people. You have the verbal communication, but you also have what? The nonverbal communication. And what is that? That's eye contact, body language, how a person, may be, if they look distracted or they don't look distracted. What are they wearing? And we'll talk about that too next week. All of those different things play into how someone receives you, a person's perspective of you. If it's virtual, there's some positives and negatives because you lose that factor, right? Sometimes, the nonverbal stuff helps, pick up for some of the verbal stuff. But let's say, for example, you can't find the right words, or maybe maybe a little nervous, but your energy is there. You're smiling, your eyes are shining. That may help circumvent some of the verbal. If it's virtual, you don't have that, right? So they always say, if you have to do a virtual interview, you need to up your energy at least 2 times what you already are. If you know that you are a shy person or that you're a very reserved person, please do not get on the video and be shy and reserved. You're going to have to be a little bit more animated because you're going to fall flat. You will fall flat, on a virtual interview. And what I mean by fall flat means your appearance, the perspective that someone may have of you may be like, oh, this person is disinterested. This person does not seem, eager to have this job. And that just could be your natural disposition. So they always say it is a slight disadvantage if you are virtual, and that you're just going to have to amp up that personality a little bit more. And then, chapter 10 also goes on to talk about the technical side of that, right? The worst thing that you can do is be late for a virtual interview. Can you imagine signing on, and then as soon as you sign on, you got faces looking at you because they were waiting for you. Like, you don't ever want them waiting for you. You want to be waiting for them. It's the same concept, even if you are doing a virtual interview. Clearly, the worst one is telephone. I rarely, and I'm going to tell you, I rarely ever get jobs if it's just telephone. I don't know what it is. And it's partially because I am a bit reserved, believe it or not. Like, yeah, it doesn't sound like it with you guys because we know each other. We've been talking for a minute. But when I meet someone for the first time, I am the worst first impression person, even in person, because I am shy. Can you believe it? I'm shy. So I don't tend not to like to talk to people I don't know. That's kind of normal, right? But I mean, obviously at work, you guys don't see it because I'm forced to be, myself on the job. But if I were just going somewhere, I would not talk to anybody on the first time. Imagine me on a first date. It's horrible. I have to get to know you first. Now, after the first, second, third time, it's like I'm a completely different person. So over the phone, if I don't know you, I tend to let you guide the conversation, and that can come across a bit awkward, so I always do best when it's verbal. When it's live, or if it's video virtual, maybe, but the worst for me is the telephone. Now, every now and then I'll do okay on the telephone, but I hate the telephone. I may sound fine to you guys now, but it's because we've already met. Trust me. It's because we've already met. Of course, again, if it is a video, though, my friends, make sure that you know how to use the system. Right now we're on Teams, but there's a lot of different video protocols, right? You have Google, you have Skype, you have a big blue button, you have all kinds of, you have Zoom, you have so many different ones. To make sure your camera is working, your microphone is on, like so much drama with that. So you just really have to make sure, you have to practice too, always make sure my equipment is working before I get onto any video call. And sometimes too, if there's a Microsoft Teams, if anybody has more than one Microsoft Teams, you already know the drama I'm about to say. You have to log out of one team to log into another team. Sometimes they send you their team's profile. And if you're not logged into the right email that they put on their team's profile, you can't get to the video. I don't know if anybody's ever dealt with that, but that is some drama. So you don't want that drama. Like, you really got to know and understand how those video systems work if you're going to do those videos, right? Nobody wants that drama. All right. Now, let's get into the heart of these interview questions. There are 3 different types of questions. One is called the general information set of questions. 2 are behavioral type questions. And third are the stress related questions. What are these questions? All right. We all know that when we first come to a job, a company, they're going to eventually get around to introducing themselves, and we have to introduce ourselves. The first thing that they typically ask is what? And I know some of you actually put it on the questions that you hate. What can you tell me about yourself? Sometimes they may start with, walk me through your job history, right? At some point, they may ask later on down the line after they've introduced themselves, what type of work are you looking for, that type of stuff, what are your strengths, anything to do with you specifically. But most times they're going to ask, tell me about yourself. My friends, when they ask you that question, they do not want you to tell them about you. I know some of you are clutching your pearls like, what? They don't want to know about me? No. Here's what they want to know. When they say, tell me about yourself, what they're really saying is, why are you here? I know you guys right now are saying, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Then why do they phrase it that way?
Good. It'll make sense in 2 seconds. Watch this. What they really mean is tell me why you're here. So what are they really saying? How did you come to be here? They don't want to know, you got two dogs and a cat and you're from Jersey. What they want to know is, let's pretend I am applying for a VA, a veterinary assistant job. They want to hear me say something like this. When I was a kid, I always loved animals. Every summer, I used to go to the farm because my grandparents had a farm. There, I realized that, the large animals is what I gravitated to the most. Throughout the work I've done in the past, I've always found myself, taking on jobs, even volunteering at different places like pet clinics, helping, animal shelters and things of that nature. I did do some customer service in the past, and I even briefly worked, at Home Depot, but I found that I really had a passion for animals. So that's why I went to school. I saw that your company, you guys do a lot of animal shelter pickups, and that's something that I really have a passion for, and that's why I'm applied to this job. You see what I just did? My entire career, whatever it is, led me to you. It's like dating. I'm telling you guys, interviewing is like dating. You're courting them. Some of you Rico Suaves are already like, oh, okay, I get it. Y'all get it? You're courting them. So they just want to know, okay, why here? Why me? Why not the guy down the street? Right? So when they ask you to tell them about yourself, you interweave very briefly your career with your personal and make it geared towards the position you are applying for. So if you're in welding or if you're in electrical or HVAC, really, you have to ask yourself, why did I apply for this job? Why did I get into this industry? There's something that led you to it. You don't wake up one day and want to be an artist and say, you know what? I think I'm going to try welding. There has to be something in your background that made you say, this is a good fit for me. Does that make sense? And that is what you want to lean on. So you talk to me. Tyshana, did you want to say something? Is that okay? So y'all see what I did? You want to make it, because that is your story, right? You didn't just wake up one morning and say, I think I'll do HVAC today, right? Give me a thumbs up if you feel like you have a story for why you are in the position you're in right now. Give me, most of us do, hopefully. Hopefully nobody is going to say, my friend said this would be a good idea, so I tried it. Go ahead, Nelson. Or did you? Most of us have a story. You just have to tell the story, right? And make it make sense, right? Don't ever just say, oh, I'm here because I need to make some money for my family. That may be true, but again, there's a lot of ways to make money for your family. So there still is a specific reason as to why you're in that industry that you're in and why you applied to that company. That's what they want to know. So don't spend too much time on one thing in particular, but focus on that. It gives them a sense of who you are as a person. All right. Now, they may ask one or two, and typically what will happen is most of them will start telling you about the company. Most of them will start saying, hi, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you a little bit about the company. And then they'll say, okay, let me tell you a little bit about the position, right? It could go either way. And then they'll say, tell me a little bit about yourself. Or some of them may start out by saying, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then they'll tell you a little bit about the company. Either way, there you go. Then what will happen, they're going to divide their questions up into two sectors. Now, let me preface this by saying, as I said before, they're not experts at this, guys. Most people, supervisors or whatever, all y'all have been hired somewhere if you've had a job before. Did that person seem like an interview expert? No. Most of these people is just part of their job. They have to, interview people. They don't even know that these questions are divided like this. So this is why you're in an academic class, because you are learning the technical side of it. Sometimes even HR people don't know these questions are divided in this way, right? You have to have an HR degree or a business degree to even know the questions are divvied up like this. You have to learn it. So what happens is questions are divided into two main categories outside of general. One are behavioral, one are stress. Most behavioral type questions are past tense. So the scenario of the question itself will always start out with, tell me about a time when. Always something in the past. What is it designed to do? It's designed to give them a sense of how you would behave in a particular situation, right? Most of them are going to be on three different scenarios. One, a situation with a customer. Two, a situation with a coworker. Or three, a situation with the boss, right? So it's always going to be, tell me about a time when you had a difficult customer. Tell me about a time when you had to meet a deadline that your manager wanted. Tell me about a time when you had to work with a difficult teammate. What did you do? What do they want to know? Do they want to know the story? Some interesting story that's going to make them have a chuckle or two? No. They want to know, do you know how to problem solve? So here again, Nelson, they do not ask the question that they want to really know. They want to know, do you know how to problem solve? So they want to know what your behavior is like. How would you be in a specific situation? What would you do? It's very similar to what I taught you guys when you do resumes. Remember when I said that PAR factor, problem, action, result? That is what the behavioral question is about. Tell me about a time there was a problem. What action did you take and what were the results? Hopefully it was positive. If not, don't choose that example, right? They want to know, do you have the ability to problem solve? So if it is a customer, what do you think that scenario needs to focus on? Whatever that customer was, you found a way to fix the problem. Whatever it is. So you need to dig into your memory banks. And this is why you are going to take a tablet, a paper, and a pencil or pen with you on your interview, because you're going to have written down, not in detail, in like code words, I'll talk about that in a minute, what example you are going to use when they ask these questions. You just need something to jog your memory because you don't have time to be trying to memorize everything, right? So you're not going to walk in there unprepared. You're going to have a different scenario written down, even if it's just Sam, and Sam could be that difficult customer experience that you had. So tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult customer. How were you able to overcome it? You had a situation where Sam was being belligerent because Sam said that y'all were supposed to give him the extra special. You didn't give him the extra special, so you had to come in there. You talk Sam off the ledge. You help him to understand how the special works. Wasn't going to go on to next month. You know, Sam was embarrassed, but y'all laughed and joked about it. You offered him a membership and everybody went home happy, right? Whatever the situation is. So on your little notepad, you're just going to have Sam. If they ask your customer, if they say, tell me about a time when you and a coworker had to work together and it wasn't working out. 9 times out of 10, they want to know, did you go snitch on your coworker, or did you work with your coworker as a team? You know, companies love teams, and make it work. So you don't want to say, whenever I have a problem with my team member, I just go tell my boss. They don't want to hear that. What they want to hear is, when, Sammy was having a hard time, I went to Sammy and I asked him, and it turns out Sammy had a hard time doing step 2 of the 3-step process that we had to do. So I spent some time with Sammy to help him learn that process, and we were able to finish the project on time. That's all they want to hear. Did you help Sammy? Did the project end on time because you worked as a team and you helped Sammy? So you're going to have on your little notepad, Sammy. So there you got Sam and Sammy. You see what I'm doing? Or they could say, tell me about a time your boss was asking you to do too much and you had a conflict and you had to go tell your boss, or, your boss, you had a major deadline. What did you do? They really just want to know. We know that bosses give us too much work. How do you manage up? That's what we call it. We call it managing up. How do you manage up when you got too much on your plate? What they want to hear is, You go to your boss and you ask clarifying questions. Hey, Mr. Johnson, I know you wanted me to do project A. I saw that in the email you sent me project B. I just want to know, should I take precedence on project B, or would you like me to finish out project A first? Or if there is a true issue, they don't want to hear you going to your boss saying, oh my God, Mr. Johnson, we got a problem over here. You should come take a look at it. They want to hear you say, hey, Mr. Johnson, I've identified an issue. Now, I personally feel like we can do this or we can do that. What do you suggest? That lets Mr. Johnson know that you are a problem solver. And then you and Mr. Johnson are going to work it out and everybody's going to walk away happy. Does that make sense? So on your sheet, you're going to have what? Mr. Johnson and a little whatever to jog your memory about what that issue is. Do we have any questions on that? No? Good. So behavioral type questions has everything to do. Now, do they all fit in this little box that I'm talking about? No. You know, they could give you a curveball. But most times it's tell me about a time when you've done something in the past, and what they really just want to know is what your behavior is. And what they really want to know is all your problem solver. All right. Now, what about stress-related questions? These types of questions are going to be, for the most part, specific to the job you are applying for. So these questions are going to be hypothetical in nature, and it's going to be centered around the position, right? Now, the kicker to these questions, even though they're going to follow the same type of rubric, let me make sure. A second, and mute everybody. It's still going to follow the same type of rubric in terms of you needing to have a situation with a customer, a coworker, or your boss, right? It's still going to have needing those three types of scenarios, but it's going to be dealing with something at their company. Now, the only kicker is that oftentimes they'll throw something in that was a problem at their company. Sometimes it can be the person that left and while you're there, or it can be some type of issue that they have with their company. And that's the part that you're not going to really know. But even with that variable, it's still going to be, what would you do if, right? So instead of tell me about a time when, it's going to be, what would you do if? So how do you prepare for that? Well, you know the type of job you're applying for. You see the job description. So even if I'm a VA person, it's probably going to have something to do with a pet clinic. Now, obviously, if I'm at a pet clinic, they're not going to ask me a question about an animal shelter. So I know these hypothetical questions are going to have something to do with being at a pet clinic. So they're probably going to have something to do with a customer, because y'all know at the VA, if you're at the clinic, you're dealing with customers, and most times the drama is centered around how much it costs for that pet. You having to put that pet down, or what else comes around, or you have to give somebody bad news that you weren't able to save something. It's going to center around something with that, and the customer typically being upset about their pet, right? So it could be one of those scenarios. If it's a pet clinic and it's a veterinarian, what could you deal with there? Typically, y'all know sometimes doctors can be a little whatever. So you may end up having to deal with your person asking you to do something that's a little bit uncomfortable, or something outside of your comfort zone, or maybe, I don't know, having to deal with maybe a vicious animal, then you're a little bit nervous, and how do you handle that, right? So think about the environment in which you're applying for the job, and you got to kind of think, okay, what type of scenarios would happen at this particular company? And then you want to try to be able to answer that, right? So try again to think of, well, maybe I don't have that particular example, but I have an example similar to that. So you want to put down stress related questions. What would I do if? What would I do if I had to deal with a difficult customer? Well, sometimes you can use the same scenario. So if they ask a hypothetical and it's very similar to your behavioral type question, or and what you say, well, what if I answer it for the behavioral? Most times, like I said to you, they don't even know what they're asking. So there is no guarantee that they're going to ask you a behavioral and a stressed. They could ask you all behavioral type questions. They can ask you all stress related questions. So they can be interchangeable. The only difference is under the stress is going to be a hypothetical, future based. You're in their environment, and typically under the behavioral is past, right? So you can still use those same scenarios. Instead of saying what did you do, is like what would you do if? Does that make sense, guys? But if you can think of any other scenario based questions based on the type of company that you're working for. So maybe if you're in an HVAC, and maybe you've only worked for HVAC in the military, and now you're going to go, apply for this job, working at, the airport, right? So what type of drama could happen at an airport in the HVAC? So you got to kind of think about that and try to have 1 or 2 examples on deck, right? And again, don't let you don't need to have this all written out on your notepad so it'll look like you're bringing, a cheat sheet to the interview, but you can just have it in your own little code so you know what it means, right? Just a couple of little sentences or a couple of little words on the notepad that you're going to bring anyway, because when they're talking to you and they're talking about the company and they're talking about your positions, just look studious, jot down a few notes to let them know you're serious. They love it when you do that, because that means that you're really interested in the job. If you're just listening, going, and you don't really have any follow-up questions and you're not taking notes, some people don't take you serious. I'm not saying all of them, because some of this could be non-applicable. Some of us could have very non-traditional interviews where they just talking, about shop and walking you around and patting you on the back and like, yeah, dude, you got the job. Okay, that's like 10% of us are going to have that experience. The rest of us are going to have a regular experience. Okay, so don't always hang your hat on. It's just going to be a quick little chopping it up about basketball and you're going to get the job, right? Sometimes it does happen that way. I've had interviews where the person did all the talking. I think they may have asked me 2 questions and I got the job. I was like, did she even know I was here? But hey, okay, I'm a good listener. So you just really don't know how people are, but you want to be prepared regardless of how they are. Does anybody have any questions about behavioral versus stress related questions, how to prepare for them, what to ask, what to say? Any questions on that? No? Now the book also talks about what we call blue sky questions. And these are questions where the interviewer describes a scenario that may or may not be related to your duties and requires a response from the candidate. In those scenarios, what do they want? They still are just looking to see how, because when they say stress related, and it could almost be deceptive, because both of the scenarios are about your behavior. But the reason why they call them stress is because, sometimes, you are put under pressure. They want to see how you react under pressure. Well, the same way you would react in a behavior, it's the same way you would act. Your behavior shouldn't change if you're under stress. It's just, you're still going to focus on what? The problem. You're still going to have an action, and hopefully the result is going to be positive. So it doesn't really matter. The only difference is with stress, they want to see, can you keep your cool? Right? So they're going to throw a twister in there. Oh, you have 5 customers at one time. A vicious animal comes through the door, or something breaks down. You just worked at the residential HVAC, and you can't, and it broke down. You had to come back 3 times to fix it, and now the customer's all upset because it's your fault. What are you going to do about it? Right? I don't care what the scenario is, how crazy they try to make it. They just want to know, can you keep your cool, deal with the issue, and make the consumer happy? That's all they want to know, right? Even whether it's what happened in real life or not, that is what they want to hear. All right. Now, there are some questions they will never, ever ask if they got any common sense at all. Hopefully, their HR department has told them, please don't ask these people these questions because you can get us in court. So when we say illegal, that means court. You understand? There are questions that you cannot ask people no matter what. I don't care if she comes in there 8 months pregnant or she looks 8 months pregnant. They cannot say, are you pregnant? Ma'am, are you about to give birth and you apply for this job? So wait a minute, that means that you're about to be out, for a couple weeks. They can't ask that question. Now they can look and see that you have a big old belly, but they should not be asking anything about your birth. I don't care if you have a ring on your finger. They should not be saying, so are you married? Did you just give, what's the scenario with that? I don't care if they start talking about marriage and all of that. Please, my friends, don't offer up any information about yourself. Keep it cordial. Why, Miss Taylor? Why should we not do that? Shouldn't we try to build a rapport? No, because what you tell that person can and will be used against you. They may like it, but they may go talk to their boss because they're so happy they just got married. And then you're over there, chit-chatting it up, telling all your business about you just got married, y'all just had a baby, y'all just bought a house. And that boss could be a mean little stickler that hates kids, and they're going to be thinking, oh, here this one go. Now they got a kid. They're going to be wanting to get off early to go pick them up from school. Do you see how that could be used against you? Keep your business to yourself. I don't care how friendly that person is. You can smile and grin and hee, that's good, but stay on topic. You understand? Stay on topic. Do not offer up information that may be used against you. Don't talk too much about anything. They shouldn't be asking you how old you are. I don't care if you walking with a cane. Now, of course, unless you can't do the job with that cane. But I don't care if you have a whole bunch of gray hair. You know how some people do age discrimination. They cannot ask you. I don't care if you come in there and your glasses look like 2 sets of Coke bottles. And they're like, oh my God, how is this person going to do this job? They cannot ask you, ma'am, are you legally blind? Something is going on here. They cannot ask those questions. And if they do, they can get themselves in a lot of trouble. You run it. No, I was going to say, run down and get you a lawyer. No, I'm just kidding.
HIPAA.
But they,
Is that a HIPAA violation to ask that sort of stuff?
well, a HIPAA violation typically, it could be, is when, you talk about any medical related stuff, for an employee or a potential candidate, right? So it's
Right,
definitely
like asking if you're legally blind.
Sir, do you do realize this is a welding job and those looks like 2 sets of glasses you have on, right? So they cannot ask those questions, right? They don't need to be concerned about your ethnicity. You look like you mixed with this and that. My cousin, I don't care what your cousin is about, ma'am. Do not ask me about my ethnicity, my gender, my marital status, my religion. Again, that interviewer could be totally innocent, right? They're just chit-chatting, but they're going to go share that information with somebody else, and you don't know the other person on the other end, and you don't need anything distracting them from what you as a potential candidate. Does that not make sense? Now, once you get on there, if it turns out that you and the boss went to high school together and y'all want to chit-chat about that, that's fine. But during the interview, please don't even put yourself at any disadvantage. Again, I know a lot of us think, oh, it's an advantage to try to chit-chat with a person and we have things in common. You may have things in common with that person, but maybe not the other person that is going to review your application. Go ahead, Isaiah.
So then I have a question. So how do we deflect those type of answers
Oh,
or
that's a
questions?
perfect question. So typically they won't, well, they'll imply, right? So normally when someone wants to ask something, people are sneaky, right? So if they see something, like if it's deliberate, like you look pregnant or you look like you're blind, or, they're concerned about your gender or whatever, they'll find a way to get around to it. So they may chit chat a little bit about themselves, about a scenario. Then they may ask you, and I ask a question with a question, oh my God, you look like you went to high school back in 1975. And I was like, 2005, he, and I changed the subject. I don't answer, right? You don't need to worry about, when I went to school. So a lot of times I use deflection by using humor. Or someone asks, are you disabled? I'm saying, no, I just partied real hard last night and changed the subject, right? Like you don't want to be rude and be like, ma'am, you can't ask me that question. But sometimes by not answering the question, they get the point, right? Oh, did you get married? No, I didn't. Be nice, but just don't answer the question, right? Or they see a cross, maybe you're Jewish or Christian or whatever it is, and you wear something around your neck, and you're like, oh, that's nice, thank you. Oh, that's a beautiful cross. Thank you. Oh, I see you have the Star of David or whatever. Oh, it's nice. Thank you. And just don't talk about it. Right. So don't offer up personal information about yourself. Nobody's going to come right out and say, what's your gender or whatever, or what are your pronouns? Typically, they don't go by that. Typically, it's you have to offer up that. They're not supposed to ask. If they do ask, you could say, well, I go by this, or that either is fine, or whatever it is you feel like you need to say, but dead the conversation. That is my advice to you. So you want to, politely decline, but I say deflect. That is the best way to get away from that. Or, smile and grin, and they're talking about their kids. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's very nice. Oh, they're very beautiful. And then, try to go deflect the conversation back to the position and the job. Because here's another thing. Again, some interviewers, like I said, they're not professionals at the job unless they have an HR person in there that's really guiding it. And sometimes their HR people are not even good at it. They are going to remember the words that came out of your mouth. Now, if you allow that interviewer who's not very good at it to, take you off into a tangent talking about non-important things, and then when they have to sit down with their boss or their team, because they're going to take the information back. If you don't remember anything else, know that. Even if it's just the person that is the boss, they're still going to talk about you to somebody, and you are being compared against other people that they've met with, right? Unless they offer you the job on the spot, you are going to be compared against other people. And what do you want them to remember? The fact that you got a dog named Susie, or the fact that you've done the job? So you want to be able to answer those questions, and you want the answers to those questions to stand out, not the fact that you guys both love the same sports team. Oh, I can't even remember what Nelson said. The only thing you remember is that Nelson loves football. That is a horrible interview. Y'all may have built a rapport, but the person doesn't remember half the stuff you said. You see my point? So you are managing that interviewer because it's a competition, and you want to make sure that you're able to beat that competition. That interviewer could have, let's say, 10 questions that they need to ask you. But because you guys have so much in common, y'all go off into a tangent and you're thinking, oh, this is going to end well. And they only ask you 5 questions. And then somebody else that's super prepared and knows how to manage that interview is going to come in there and talk about what makes them a great candidate, and they're going to kill the interview. Who do you think they're going to hire? Mr. I was too friendly, or Mrs. I had all the answers and the boss loves that person. So again, like, don't be stoic, don't be impersonal, but make sure you manage that, because you need all those questions answered so you have the best shot of being given an opportunity. Does that make sense, guys? Remember, you're coming in there, you're gonna rock it. You're in charge. You're in charge. You are promoting you. You don't have time for that foolishness, right? Now, should you ask questions? Of course you should ask questions. Here's one thing that you don't want to do. If they start talking about the company at the top of the hour, and you have, because there's something else you're going to have on your little cheat sheet, have 1 or 2 things about the company that either you want to bring up or that stood out to you. Maybe they got that contract. Maybe they're opening up a different pet clinic, whatever stood out to you. Maybe it has something to do with the position that you're applying for and you have a clarifying question. When do you ask those questions? Please do not wait to the end when they say, do you have any other questions? And now you're trying to circle back and talk about a position when they brought the position up in the beginning when they were going through the general information questions. So if they start talking about the company and that position and you have a clarifying question, now don't dig into it too much, but if it's something like the position is going to be in a different town Yeah, we're so excited about you. We just started this new project. That's why we're bringing people on, about this new project. And you can say, oh, yeah, is that the one down in Fort Myers? That's the one that we're going to be at? That was your clarifying question. It says two things. Number one, you've done your homework. And number two, you got that question answered because maybe you don't want to go to Fort Myers. And so now you'll say, okay, I wanted to clarify because I'm not going to Fort Myers, but at least you got it answered. You see what I'm doing? So whatever clarifying question you have, ask during the time it's being presented. Don't wait till the end because then the person may think, well, dang, we talked about that 30 minutes ago. That person should have asked me about that then. Were they listening to me? You don't want them thinking that. So that is when you're going to ask those questions. You can ask some really general follow-up questions are always going to be, where are you in the hiring process? i.e., am I the first person you've interviewed or am I the last person you interviewed? If I'm the first person and you have 15 other people you're interviewing, that means I may not hear from this job until next month. Okay, that at least manages my expectations. If I'm the last person you've interviewed, that means you should be tallying up your scores and maybe I should hear next week. You see the difference? So you need to know, do I need to continue to put out my resumes? Do I need to wait a couple of days because I really want this job? So you want to know where they are in the hiring process is a very common question. Great to ask. You can ask if it feels right. If it's an overtime job, should we expect a lot of overtime, not a lot of overtime? Don't ask in a way that makes you feel anxious or greedy or anything like that. Like you don't want to, that's why I say fill it out. You don't want them to think if they do a lot of overtime, oh, this person has a problem with overtime. Or if they don't do overtime, you don't want them to say, oh, they're not going to want the job because we can't afford overtime. So you want to ask it in a nonchalant kind of way. And you just take your little notes and you'll deal with it on the outside. Now, if you're the type of person that you make that extra money because you do overtime, that's something you have to consider. If you're the type of person that says, and I got to go pick my kid up, I need a fast stop at 5:00. I don't want no overtime. That's something you have to consider. Do not bring it up. Don't make any facial expressions. Just write it down, right? So have a couple of follow-up questions. Maybe you have to go do training, and the training's in a different town, and they didn't tell you about that. So you can ask those clarifying questions, but ask when they talk about it. Again, they got this new project down in Fort Myers. That's why they're bringing the team on. Maybe you live close to Fort Myers, so you were okay with that. Maybe you live in Miami, but you didn't know the training was going to be in Tampa, right? So, I just wanted to clarify, Sam, you mentioned that about the training. You said it's in Tampa, right? And how long is that for? All right, thank you so much. Don't let on that you like it or don't like it, but that is how you ask those clarifying questions, right? One other clarifying question I always ask, if they don't mention it, like, hey, this is a new project. Oh, is this a new position? When was the last time this position was filled? Don't ask it in a way that makes you seem desperate, though. Like, how much work am I going to have to do? Because many of us, myself included, have walked into jobs where they fired the person left them, and the position hasn't been filled for 3 or 4 months. So you get welcomed with a stack full of work. Now you stressed out on day 2. So you want to know what you're walking into, but again, don't let on that it's an issue, but just ask, oh, did someone recently leave? Or, is this a new position? Somewhere around that. So you'll understand what you're walking into. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions that you were curious about should you ask that you want to ask me now? All right, I get it. I know silence means be quiet, Miss Taylor. Okay. What should you not ask about? Don't ask about money yet. Why? Because what normally happens, the same way the HR person offered you the invitation, you're going to sit down with that hiring manager. They're going to talk about your skills. They're going to be assessing whether you have the skills to do the job. You're going to ask them clarifying questions about the job. You're going to assess, is this really the type of job that you thought it was when you applied? And then y'all both are going to go back to your respective corners and you're going to say to yourself, is this job worth 25? And they're going to say to themselves, is this person worth 25? And then HR person is going to come to you and say, ma'am, sir, we want to offer you 27. And you're going to say, yes, where do I sign? Or they may say, we're going to offer you 22. And you're going to say, well, wait a minute. I was thinking 25, and you want to tell them why. Now, I'm prefacing that is how it normally goes. Do not go to career services and say, Ms. Taylor told us to deny the job and negotiate, because career services may be helping you guys get your first job, and it could be non-negotiation. Know what you're getting into, especially if the company says this is the starting point. But if there is a range, typically you negotiate. But please do not go deny a job because I said so. That you, I lost a job because Ms. Taylor told me to negotiate. Has that happened to me before? Yes, it has. So I don't want that drama. But that is how it typically goes, because once you've gone to the interview, you know what they're actually asking. I know if it was me and I had to travel from Miami to Tampa, I'm going to wonder, am I going to get reimbursed for that? I'm going to factor in reimbursement. That's the traveling time. So, ma'am, I'm looking for 24 at minimum, and here's why. And that's how you negotiate. That's typically how you negotiate an offer. Do we understand?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. All right. You'll be preparing for a mock, and this is why. Why are we doing a mock interview next week? Because this is why. So hopefully you understand why we want you to do the mock interview now, right? Because you got to get this behavioral, stress-related general question thing down. So we got to let you practice it to make sure you know what you're doing. Yeah? Yeah, makes sense? Y'all got it? All right. Of course, we know what to do the night before. The chapter 10 talks about that. We already talked about arriving early, making sure you look good. You're smelling good and all those great things. All right, here we go. Here's our live conference question. Name 3 things you are looking for in a company. Don't list money. Everybody wants money. Nobody is volunteering their services. Name 3 things. What does that mean? Maybe you're looking for an opportunity to advance. Maybe you're looking for an opportunity to learn a new skill. Maybe you're looking for an opportunity where there's flexibility, because work and family life balance is very important to you. What are the 3 things that you're looking for in a company? If there are no further questions, I'm going to stop the recording. I'll leave this up, but